right, welcome to B Shifter. It's John Vance, Nick Brunacini today. Glad to have you along with us. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing quite well, John Vance.
What's new in your world?
It's 2024, the new year. But, really, it's the same old stuff, just the new year to do it in, I think, which is good. That's, I think that's kind of the way we set this up, is you want things a certain way and, to progress through time that way, I guess.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Things are going good.
You?
Yeah, doing great. I'm about ready to embark on a little bit of a life change, which brings us to the question that we were going to talk about today. That was suggested by our friends at the Loveland Fire Department in Colorado. That Loveland. And the question is when do you know it's time? And right now I'm getting ready to, in just a few business days, leave the job that I've been in for a little over 10 years to pursue other avenues, including more work with B Shifter and Blue Card, and a little part-time fire job that I'm going to help a department out with. So I'm looking forward to all of that. But the question is how do you know it's time? Like what do you do to validate that decision? What are the indications that you're ready for a change? Maybe change isn't good for everybody. I mean, I know some people really freak out with change.
True that.
What do you think about that?
Well, Vance, I think you, I don't know, you said it earlier. It's both fluid and dynamic at the same time. And as life evolves and changes, sometimes it does it in a way that it's better to zig instead of zag, maybe. Mm-hmm. So for you, what led you to the decision that it's time for me to go?
There's a couple of things. I mean, there's always been the work that we're doing here that has been kind of on the back burner, and I'm juggling a couple of things. But with me, it was more of an organizational checkup. And I've seen a lot of fire chiefs leave when they're at the lowest point of their career because they were forced out, or, there's a change in administration with the city manager or a mayor that doesn't necessarily like the direction of the fire department. And I didn't have any of that. I mean, what I had was a fire department that I think is functioning very, very well right now. We had two major events that I believe we got a B+ and an A on. And that was a firefighter with a Mayday. That firefighter with the Mayday was quickly resolved just per all of our training like we normally do. And then following that was a physical rescue from a house. And we were coming back from the conference in Cincinnati. I was riding in the van with 6 other guys from my department, and we pop a house fire. So we start listening to it, as people do on their phones now. And while listening to this fire, at first I was getting angry because I feel like we're not staffed appropriately. There were about 8 people on the scene, and they had a victim trapped. Now, listening to it further, they did a great job. I mean, they found out that it was a walkout basement because they did a 360. There are only 7 occupancies on that street with a basement, and this was one of 7 in this entire complex of condominiums. And they identified that they had a walkout, that they could make access, they thought, to the victim that way. They went in, did a search. The search took about 2.5 minutes. They found the victim, brought her out through the Charlie side, and got her in the ambo. That was all in 10 minutes from arrival on the scene to the patients in the ambo on the way to the hospital. She had partial thickness burns, smoke inhalation. She was in bad shape. She made it. I mean, she luckily made it, and it's because of the crews. And then finding out what the crews did, they got water on the fire while that search was going on simultaneously, so they didn't forget about the fire. They took care of that. And after that, I kind of felt like my work here is done. I don't know how much better it's going to get here on out. So that day, October 7th, 2023, I made my decision, as soon as I can leave, I'm going to leave. And I think shortly thereafter, I gave my 3 months notice. So I'm leaving at the best time for the organization, I think, to pass it off to somebody else who can take it to new heights.
And I think that's the way to do it, because typically it's the complete opposite, like you kind of prefaced it with. is generally we leave when it's not the best. And in fact, I was laying there the other day, just kind of taking stock of your life and how things are, and, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And I came to the realization, I thought, you know, I really wish like the sun would blow up right now, because I don't think it's going to get any better for me at this point. I mean, over the last few years, we've been making changes and evolving as a human being and all the other stuff. And I thought, I'm at a point now where I kind of feel like you do with your job. It's time for me to leave. I've done all I can do here. It's as good as I could make it. It's so, but typically it's the opposite. For my career, it was kind of the opposite. It wasn't, I left under different terms than you did. But for me, it was obvious. It was time to go because I couldn't do everything I wanted to do. So it was like, okay, I've done this for a long time. And I think that's one of the unique things about us over damn near every other occupation in the world is I worked in the same place for 29 years. You know, no, but that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, people just are all over the page. Even in the fire services, they don't do that very much. I think that's becoming less the rule and more the exception, I think, to stay somewhere your whole career. So for me, it was, you left under a certain, then there were things going on. We had a new administration and there were changes and you thought this is ridiculous. But during that time, I thought back on the older people I watched leave that were in the same position. They were pissed off and it just, you got to be able to figure out that I can be pissed off about certain things over here, but that's not what my life is. And so, you know, I have the ability to change that. So, and that was kind of it. And I was pretty fortunate, to be honest, because I was at the point where I thought I can leave and I can give this a try over here and see what this is going to produce. So, you know, I'm going to just shift gears a little bit. And that's, you know, so I retired from the government work and we started doing this. And here we are Jesus, it's 14, 15 years ago, man. And it goes by in a blink. So, yeah, it's good to have choices and options and things like that.
Well, I think far too many people in our occupation get locked in. They don't give themselves any choices. There is no way out. They get fed up and stay instead of fed up and leave. And, you know, it is a free country. If you're unhappy in your job, you should find something else to do. I mean, it's a third of our life where we're working. So I think we owe it to ourselves. And we also owe it to ourselves to have new challenges. I mean, I've been a fire chief for 22 years. Wow. And that's a long time to be, you know, wearing 5 bugles. I mean, all but one of them, I wore 5 bugles. I'm really looking forward to some new challenges in the fire service, and I want to do them while I'm young enough to still be vibrant or somewhat vibrant doing it because, you know, time is going fast, like you said.
Oh, yeah, we'll be dead before we know it anyway. So, I mean, it's just kind of the way it goes. But it was interesting. And at the time when I left, our organization was going through some huge changes because you had a fire chief who was there for, damn near 30 years and was very successful and well-known and all that went with that. And then for just an organization to change and somehow figure out, okay, what's our new course going to be? You know, because there's a lot of people that want to fill in and they want it to go different ways. And, you know, and that starts before they even retire. So all that's, you know, you got all that brewing and stuff going on in the background. And then, you know, you're going to retire and then all this takes place. And it seems to me that people kind of lose their minds, especially the ones that when the existing leader leaves, there's a leadership vacuum. So everybody's kind of competing to fill that. And it's it's very dysfunctional, is my experience in watching that. You think this is not, you're doing this about individuals and we're an organization. We're not a person, we're a team of people here. And so that kind of, there's a lot of beauty contest, pretty pigism going on during those times. So, and really the workforce, I mean, this is kind of like an organizational dynamic where they've had this over a very long time. And so they're kind of without a rudder and they're wondering, oh, wow, this is going to be something. So there was a group of us like, yeah, we got front row seats and popcorn, man. This is going to be, it's going to be interesting to see what occurs next. And then at some point, I think they all figured out, hey, we have a stake in this. This is where we live a third of our lives. And I don't know if I want to, there's too much stress that goes with it. And you're almost powerless because it's like, okay, I'm aboard this ship now, but they're going over here and I don't know about this. And so there's, it creates a lot of opportunity, let's say, to do either really good or nefarious stuff. But the nice thing about our career that is still there is we got a pension. And it's still, I think it's becoming more and more different in the occupational world when you look at it, especially the back end piece. Now, I've been retired, like I said, for 15 years. And a pension is a beautiful thing. It's that we're very fortunate. You're going to explore how good that is getting to get paid and not go to work. That's a very American concept.
and talking recently about pensions and retirement with a lot of a variety of people, I've had more than one person say, the young people just don't care about the pension. So I think we're here to tell you, care about your pension. It's going to give you the freedom later on when you want that freedom to do the things that you want to do, whether that's changing careers or changing departments or totally retiring and traveling the world or whatever it is you want to do. But value that pension. I think that is key.
Oh, it really is. And I mean, that was kind of the deal, was why we got it. Is firefighters did not, just kind of a historical, is we died before you collect Social Security. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons we have the pension we have. So, and the way it was set up back then is you worked 20 years and you got a pension. When I first started my career, there was a firefighter who worked for Phoenix. He was a company officer, and he had worked in the military when he was young. So like out of high school, he enlisted. And I don't know how long you got to stay in the military to get a pension, but he stayed long enough to get a pension, right? So he pensions out of the military, and then he becomes a civilian. He went to work for the post office. So he works for the post office and retires from the post office. Well, when he did that, he joined the Phoenix Fire Department. So he had 3 different careers where he was getting a pension from all 3 of them. In fact, you said earlier, Garrison, we disconnected from him today. We'll hook up on the next one. But there's a man who collected some pensions over his career. Mm-hmm. So he would just go from place to place to place. And now, when you watch that, Garrison didn't switch jobs to get more pensions. It just came with the job. He did that because he wanted to be a fire chief. He thought that was, that's like you said, okay, my career here in Phoenix is over and it's ending. So I'm going to go, I want to keep doing this, but I can't do it here anymore. That's run its course. So then he goes other places and does that. And so he probably worked, about 18 years after he retired, in 3 or 4 different places as a fire chief. And he finally had enough. He said, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. And so what's nice for the group of us is this is where old crazy firefighters who like doing incident command come to hang out in our final days here. So
or in days.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a place to keep us warm during the zombie apocalypse, which is good fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about it before because it's just not a retirement thing, but it's also knowing when you need to transfer stations, mm-hmm. knowing when it's time to take that promotional test so you can move on to the next thing. I mean, there's some indications there for people too, to know when to say when and when to move on and not hold yourself back.
Yeah, mm-hmm. There is. And it's different for all of us. The world taps you on the shoulder and says, no, you're not doing this anymore. When we first started, I thought, okay, I'm going to be a firefighter. Well, in my academy, that's where we all start. We're going to be firefighters. By the time we got to 3 months into graduate, we had all made the decision we were going to be captain paramedics, mm-hmm. because the captain was the ultimate leader of the crew, so we all want to be that pretty pig. And then paramedic, because, paramedics are the most, magnetic occupation that exists in the world, and they hook you. You can meet nurses. So we thought we're going to be captain paramedics. That's it, you know. So you start your career off, and I lost the paramedic thing pretty quick. I went to school and did all this stuff, and I thought, no, this paramedic deal ain't for me. This may not be the best thing for me to start doing medical treatment on people that is this invasive. It's time to go. When do you know?
Yeah. When you're reminiscing about the shaving part of the LV process.
Yeah, and that was a great station. I mean, it really was. It was a single engine company, and but I left there to go to a busier station. So I knew this is too sedate here for me. There's not enough people.
And you had a process in your department because you had enough stations, enough companies, enough shifts, whatever. That there was upward mobility, right?
You could. It's not upward mobility. It's more choices of where you want to work as a firefighter or an engineer within your rank. But you know, like you say, you got 50 engines. You got 50 places to pick, and then you got 3 shifts. So there's a lot of choice there, and that's really kind of what we did. The way it was set up in our department, I think it still is it was all seniority based bid. So there was nobody. No, you didn't have to get permission from some chief to get a spot, typically. As if you had the seniority and the qualifications for that spot, it was yours. It was pure seniority-based bid system, which worked out very well. And then as far as, because it was a big growing department, I don't know, during my 29 years, probably all but 2 or 3 of those years, we would put at least 3 classes through the academy every year. So there was always a lot of turnover, you know, and it was people just retiring, coming in and working their career and then retiring out the back end. So there was a lot of opportunity to promote in the thing. And I kind of stuck by that thought out of the academy, as I wanted to promote to company officer as soon as I could. That was just, I don't know why, we're just broken that way. We come like that. So I had the least amount of qualifying time to do it. I was like the one of the youngest people to take it at that time. And it's just because the way it worked out that I got hired and the timing of everything. So I had enough time to take that test. Otherwise, I would have had to wait a couple years. So I took the first one I could. And then I ended up getting promoted off of that list. So I was a firefighter about 8 years, probably, all told, 8.5. And then I worked as a company officer for about 10. And I, like you say, you figure out when it's time for you to go and stay and what you're going to do. As I rove for, I don't know, a year or so probably as a company officer. So you worked all over the city. You know, usually as you got more seniority, you kind of worked in the places you wanted to work. So you were kind of an area of town or a place or whatever it was. And then I ended up taking a ladder truck. Instead of becoming a paramedic, I went more towards that side of the workforce. So I got on a ladder. That's what we did. Is we became the Raging Queen, which was our identity for 10 years. Fantastic. That's where I was going to retire from. I was going to be a captain on a ladder truck.
Well, what made you decide from there, being a captain of the Raging Queen, that it was time to take the chief's test? The combination of me being a subordinate and the people who were my supervisors. Yeah, that didn't work out very well for a group of us. A bad boss is always inspirational to want to be a boss, because that's why I got into what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was kind of it. I didn't like, and I was doing other things. So we were very fortunate because you could take breaks from working in the field, and there were enough. Because our fire chief was such a lunatic and progressive on everything, there was always the looking and exploring and trying and changing. And so that created a lot of opportunities for the members to do different things. Because they would open up and say, okay, we need a captain, and this is good for 1 year. It's a temporary spot. You're going to staff, but this is what you're going to work on. These 2 projects, accountability systems and integrating our SOPs with NIMS. 100 years ago. It was in the 90s, early 90s. So I took a little sabbatical for like 6 months and went and worked on that. And it was perfect because we were doing training, and that's how I got involved there. So you're building all this training throughout your career. You work in the field as a regular thing. You do little training gigs as overtime deals where that kind of becomes your thing. Teach it in the community college system. So that kind of gave you that background to get those positions. And plus, nobody wanted them. I mean, if you were the captain on Engine 5, oh, I can go invent an accountability system and work on staff? The hell with that. Never. Well, you think, oh, if you think this is honey here, you get to be your own boss over here, and they give you a car. And in fact, if you're not disciplined enough, you will go to jail in that position over there. Yeah, there's too much freedom that comes with it. So it was good that you had. And what I like about it is they said, no, we want an accountability system. You're here till there's an accountability system. And we need to somehow integrate Volume 2 Fire Command with NWCG NIMS. This is NIMS in the 90s. So I just as an example, I did that little deal probably 6 months. We finished the thing, me and my partner. In fact, the guy who took the other spot, we ended up getting paired up later on and became partners. So the fact that the two of us went and did that during our careers kind of married us later on. And when we were both captains then. I became a shift commander years later, and he became my partner in the thing. So it was just, it kind of locked us in. So, but that was a good thing. And like you asked earlier, when do you know it's time to go? Well, we were in that position and we were finished. We finished our work. And so we went back and said, hey, we know this was for a year, but we got nothing to do. We got to go to the academy and train everybody now in this. And we said, yeah, we'll do that, but training goes from our training is 9 to 10:30 is our segment. Yeah, well, that's what you're going to do. The next 6 months, you're going to train every day from 9:30 to 10:30 or 9 to 10, whatever it was. Basically, you're going to be here from 8 to noon. All right, what do we do after lunch? Well, we don't know. I do. We're going to go back to the field because that's not going to be a good thing for us. No, no. So, and they agreed. They said, okay, you're right. And they said, well, but you have to go back and train. Well, yeah, we'll do that. We'll just get paid overtime for it. Oh, okay, no problem. So you get your cake and you get to eat it, and then you get an extra tub of frosting. Yes. And you think, Jesus Christ, man, this is great to be a captain.
You solved the problem for them, too.
Well, yeah, we gave them what they wanted. They gave us, and it was us. It was all us. It wasn't us and them. It was a whole thing. So that was a very good thing. And then I went back to the Raging Queen, and then I took another break probably 5 years later and went to the TV station for 6 months. But I had taken the chief's test, so I was kind of at the edge then. And that was really kind of it, is I thought, I don't want to go back. I can't go back there because I no longer can fit in the cubicle where that guy who supervises that guy comes and tells me what I'm going to do. That's, That would be like me staying in the temporary position and just kind of rolling the dice every day after lunch. So you figure out what's good for you and what's good for the organization. And I begrudgingly took the chief's test. I don't want to do this. And it was just kind of that was the attitude of the workforce, pretty much. We didn't want to be chiefs. We just didn't want to do it. And then what happened to us, Vance, as we got old, I talked about my partner, right? So now I'm a battalion chief. I had no concept, and I worked with them. I mean, I have no excuse for this, but I didn't know what they did, really. I had no idea what their function was. I'd argue with them about stuff, and so I become a battalion chief, and they put me in the field, which was good. And so it took me a couple months to figure out the routine of, because they said, oh, you have to go visit all your stations every day. So you should, every week you should have visited every single station in your battalion at least once. And so I did that for the first couple months. I thought, I'm driving around just going to places like I'm a goddamn delivery person because they said I should do this. I'm done. This is stupid. So what I would do in the morning is I would put all my work stuff in a box and put it in the back seat. So all the gradings that needed, the company officers that had to be rated, all the vacation stuff or leave slips, I was responsible for making sure they got signed. Very few, less than like 3% of those, but those would come to BC's every now and then. You typically go visit the station. Like, nah, I'm going to put it in the rig, and we'll see everybody in our battalion on calls at least once a week. And if I don't, I'll go by their station. Well, we were a busy battalion, and we would see them once a week. And sometimes I just call them over the radio. Hey, the Battalion 3 to Engine 4, I need you to meet me over in the parking lot, blah, 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 blah. We're just driving down the street. Oh, copy, blah, blah, we go over. And, hey, how you doing? Blah, 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 blah. So, boom. Simple enough. So my partner is taken off, my driver. And he's going to be gone for like 3 weeks, right? So next door, I work at, this is the 3rd Battalion, so Engine 25, 725, Ambo is next door. Busy, hammer station, man. 4,000 runs each rig, all day long. Busiest, probably one of the busiest fire stations for structure fires. A lot of single-family Maryville houses. And so you get a lot of those, one line, 10 minutes, boom, we're done.
Satisfying.
Exactly. And then light commercial. So you got these old commercial buildings. Southwest Supermarkets in the 3rd Battalion. Mm-hmm. So the 3rd Battalion went probably on double the fires of any other BC in the city. In the valley. It was the busiest one of those. So, but 725 was an adaptive response. So it's ALS. They're doing about 4,000 runs a year, and they move from station to station. It's a hammer. I go over, older senior captain. In fact, he's got like 2 years on me. I go over and say, hey, Double D is going to be off for the next couple weeks. Do you want to just move over and drive me? He says, he sits for a minute, he looks at me, he says, I'm kind of, and this was the guy who did accountability. Mm-hmm. So we were on staff together, and he just happened to be the captain on Engine 725, and I just happened to come to the 3rd Battalion. They're housed in the same facility. So we knew each other pretty well. And I said, yada, yada. And he says, Nick, that's I'm flattered that you would ask me to do that. And he says, and can you let me think about it? And I said, well, sure, what's to think about? And he says, well, I just don't know if I'm ready to give up my manhood that quickly. Oh, he said something that's snide and cute because that's the way we showed love to one another. And I said, okay, bitch, you let me know when you get it around your head if you want to do it or not. So he comes over after dinner and he says, I'm really interested in it. And he says, but, do I have to commit? And I said, well, do you want to do it? And he says, well, yeah, I want to. I said, okay, so show up next shift, and you're driving me, all right? If you don't like it, you can go back next shift to Engine 725. Yeah, you can get your scrotum back and put all the stuff in it and go back, be the captain on that engine. Oh, that'd be fantastic. All right. We work our first shift. Done. He gets there early, he pulls the truck out, he fills it with gas. It's got like 3/4, he fills it, okay. Washes everything, takes it all apart. He's a paramedic, so he takes all the EMS gear off, goes through it. I said, I'll put that back. We won't be using that today. No.
That hasn't been used in a fortnight.
Yeah, exactly. I said, there's probably an OB kit with a razor in there. It's so old. No more for you and me, buddy. In fact, it'd be better for the customer if they needed something in that box if we just beat them to death with it instead of actually treating them. Anyway, different role. You don't do that anymore. So yada, yada, yada. We do the shift. Next morning, get up, and I'm getting ready to leave, and I can't find them. The C shifters are in there doing their thing, reading the newspaper to each other. I'm walk by his dorm room, and he's laying on the ground. And, hey, Lynn, I'll see you next shift. And he's kind of like emotional. He's not crying or anything, but you can tell he's like in deep thought. And he's like, yeah, I'll be here next shift. I'm going to stay here. He says, I don't want to leave here ever. One shift.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're okay being no longer a male, let's say. Yes, I don't want to be a male anymore. I want to be with you. Okay. So that was it. We Double D left probably I don't know, about a year later, he promoted. He says, time for me to go and be a chief somewhere. Off he goes. And then Lynn came over. I said, okay, you're it. And then we went to shift commanders probably 3 years later. I'm going to say 2 or 3 years later, we went to shift commanders. Southwest Supermarkets happened. We go to shift commanders. We become shift commanders. Me, Garrison, Hinton go to the north, and another group go south. Lynn was still my partner. We go in, we're shift commanders a while. They said, well, you guys are, basically you have the rank of a deputy chief. So you're above a battalion. A shift commander is a rank above a battalion chief. If I was on staff, it'd be a division chief is the lower rank, a deputy chief is the higher one. So they said a deputy chief should not have a captain fit. The rank doesn't match. And what your fit does is they're going to, because we had switched over with safety, we had absorbed safety. So they said, they're going to manage the safety officers, basically. So we're going to make and they were captains driving the BCs. So the shift commanders' fits become battalions. Well, my partner was on the chief's list and he was next up. So it was perfect. So what they did is they accused the two of us of masterminding this whole thing 4 years earlier. As far as that we lit Southwest Supermarkets. That, no, you didn't do that. But we know you two had something to do in this getting upgraded thing. It's, yeah, exactly. What it is we're just brighter than the rest of you.
Yes.
And we knew the life tapped us on the shoulder and said, no. Now, the reason I promoted from captain to battalion chief was because my father kept sending, and he would, if he was alive, he'd tell you this, the worst to supervise the Raging Queen. He said, now there's certain people that need to promote, and they're over there. And so that they kind of, at the end there, he would just go after people to be chiefs. He would go visit them, and probably had a 90% success rate of saying, no, you need to take the chief's test. So, in fact, he was going to do a thing. We hated it so much, Vance. He was going to hire chiefs from outside and bring them into Phoenix. And I remember sitting there talking to him about that as a captain. I said, I work on a ladder truck. I've worked here for however long it's been, 18 years, whatever. And some guy from wherever shows up and he's going to be my BC. He said, yep, that's the way it works. And then you son bitches take the test. So you're going to get supervised by out-of-towners. He says, you can't run the fire department like this anymore. He says, it ain't working. He says, all the cream is stuck at captain, company officer. He says, they need to. So God bless him. I said, no, they don't want to do it for reasons, man. The legitimate reasons you don't want to be chief. It sucks. It's not as good a job as being a captain in the field. So, and God bless them. They started fixing things and saying, okay, yeah, we get it. And boom. By the end, now I become a shift commander at this point, and it was towards the end of my career. But they started doing meetings across 3 shifts. So there was no more coming in on your days off, because that was just a given. That was one of the problems when you first promoted, is you were just expected. If there was something on your day off, you just went. And because you were middle manager, you didn't get paid for it. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, if you got paid overtime, I said, well, just a minute. If we got paid overtime, first of all, we wouldn't be having these meetings because nobody would pay for them because they're stupid. The only reason you guys are having them is you're already getting paid and you're at work, you're staff people, and this is what you do. You meet all goddamn day doing this and that and the other thing. Oh, you seem to know so much, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's why nobody will promote. So they started doing their thing, and they were moving in a place. They gave us a 4th deputy at the North Shift Commander for that reason. So you would have somebody that could be in charge of the CTC in Volume 2 all the time. And then what we were going to do is the 3 on shift, it was just going to be a cycle. So A shift, we get the 4th deputy. The A shifter goes over, spends 6 months at the CTC. He comes back on A shift, then the B shifter goes over. Boom. Now the new guy fills in, so whatever that looks like. So you had a shift commander spot you were staffing and the CTC manager spot you were staffing out of the same
4 guys.
Yeah. And so what it did is we quit going to meetings on our days off because you had a rep who was there all the time. In fact, that's where they were having the meeting, was there. So, and then they became, we became incident response again. We only did this for about one training, the last training session we did. And I was the guy. So I was the fourth deputy at that point. I said, I'll go over and start it, because we were rewriting volume 2. So we had changed enough shit in the Phoenix Fire Department with the recovery that we had to change our ops manual. I mean, it didn't match. And it was there were things that were always, that didn't reflect it accurately, but you just didn't know how. They were impossible to fix, because this, you did it this way, and this you did this way. When these two came together, there was no way to make it mesh. So I went over and I started tearing apart volume 2 and doing the thing. And then I would teach Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's in the mornings. That's how we delivered command training. And that was the staff deputy's job to do that. So then the shift commander across the street was just available all the time to go on calls, so that you weren't having to screw around with that anymore. And then my dad retired, and they closed the CTC down. They made a bunch of changes. Well, that's the right of the new fire chief. They can do whatever the hell they want. They're in charge now. Now, it should make sense and support kind of the mission of the fire department. But anyway, so that became like that was like the shot across the bow for us. We thought, okay, this is a lot of stuff's changing here. We're no longer the people that are going to be doing that change. In fact, they're going to change all the shit we did, essentially, is where they're at now, which is fine. So I stuck around for a few years, and then it became obvious to me, this is going, I got an opportunity to go over here now and do this. So I left about, probably 2 or 3 years earlier than I planned on, but it just, it worked out for me and everybody else.
And you were busy enough, you had something to go to, and because you were actually out of leave, and you had to make a choice whether you're going to work at the fire department or you're going to go train the American Fire Service. So
I do Blue Card, which, that was kind of the thing. And Blue Card was really kind of coming along at that point. And the things we wanted to do with it, we could, because we were doing it off duty. It became in 98, we formed Across the Street Productions, and that was purely to produce the second edition of Fire Command, that whole educational package. That's why we formed this company. We didn't form it to do this, what we're doing today. It
evolved.
Exactly, Vance, and that's kind of the universe knocking on your forehead, saying, no, you shouldn't be here anymore. You should be over here doing this, and more people are going to get more out of it that way. And it's not like we're a bunch of selfless bastards or anything, because I have found if you can run a successful business, you'll drive nicer vehicles than when you work for the government. So, there is that to it, but there's a lot going on. But we're doing more, I think, for the fire service today than we were doing before when we were the fire service. So, that's what it is.
And I think there's something to that. When the universe is knocking at your door, answer the frickin' door. Because, there's stuff all around you, and people just don't realize it. And, you talking about the battalion chief gig, I know people from your job that, no, I never want to be a chief. And these are guys who came in after you. And once they drove the chief and they realized, oh, okay, this is what it is, then they wanted to do it. It's like when we went to Blue Card, I used to have guys be very, very judgmental of what the chiefs were doing. Because, you get to sit in a Tahoe Mafia, you guys sitting there climate controlled, and you don't have, once that person who was very judgmental about what chiefs do sat in as a support officer once and had to keep the tactical worksheet, then they got it. They're like, oh my God, there's a lot going on here. Yes, there is. And that person then wanted to promote to be a chief. It was suddenly a cool job.
It's amazing that you bring that up. And that same guy works in every single fire department. As you would hear him in there just constantly just ragging on, this and that, and you want to slap them. But it's an epiphany when they finally get it. I've been in command vans where somebody said Mayday, and you think, uh-oh. And it got tense for a minute and a half, where it's and at the end of it, like you said, those same people, they're having to go outside and emotionally hide from everybody while they compose themselves again. And that's good. Like you say, they answered the door. They thought, I'm an idiot that I said that. There's times I thought to myself, you are a moron for the shit you have said before. say this about the position, 2 positions above you, and then 20 years later, you're in those positions. Oh, this is so wrong. But I mean, that's growth, I guess. Emotional growth.
The class we're doing this week, Pat Dale's here in the area that he used to serve. There's a guy from that area, and Pat had pulled up as the BC, and they were in the middle of a physical rescue. And this guy could not understand why the chief didn't get out of his car and help him with the rescue. And he said he was angry afterward, and he told us all this during class this week. Mm-hmm. And you know, he's going through all these emotions at the time they're going through the rescue. Then he went over to Pat, put his head on his shoulder, and wept because it was just such an emotionally charged thing. He just didn't understand the job. No one explained to him why the chief has to stay strategic and why can't everyone rush in and help the victims. No one ever done that before. Mm-hmm. Pat ended up doing it eventually, and now the guy understands and everything. But you don't know what you don't know, and I think it's up to us a lot of times to not only expose people to the reason why we're doing what we're doing as far as command functions and everything else, but also to get them to be interested in some of these other jobs in the department. Now, I've always come from way smaller departments than you, but it's been one of my jobs, I think, to try to get the next generation to want to move up. So you give them opportunities to either, act as officers or give them projects to do or whatever. Mm-hmm. So they start to get a taste, and then they realize, well, we're going to be running the organization if we do this. Mm-hmm. Our BCs run the day-to-day. It's not the ops chief, and it's not me.
Vance, I hear you. And the other thing to, I guess, recognize in all of this is when life knocks on your forehead to answer it, is there's also a limit to how high you should go. Yeah. There are some people that promote too high. You shouldn't get into a Peter principle where it's like, okay, I'm inept now, and this is, yeah. So, and a lot of times what happens is they just keep promoting those people and think, no, you can't stay in here because there's too much you can do wrong, and we can't demote you, so we're going to promote you again. And I watched that for a little while, especially like in the younger part of my career. Later on, it became, they were cherry picking people to take the chief's test. In fact, there was a year when all this broke. There were 8 people that showed up to take the chief's test. That same year, probably 200 people took the company officer's test, right? So there was no comparison. Nobody wanted to be a chief. So you have a list with 8 individuals on it. They needed 12. There was 12 promotions during the life of that list. They refused to promote 4 of the individuals on that list. They said they're sociopaths. We will not do that to the workforce. And so that's where the old man started looking. He says, I got to hire fire chiefs from outside, or chief officers from outside, because he'd go out on the road on the weekends, and he could have chose among 1,000 different people to bring back to Phoenix to be his command staff and response chiefs. And he thought, no, I can share. It's almost like Blue Card. We said, no, that person's going to be an instructor for us. They understand this better than we do. Mm-hmm. So he was seeing those individuals and thinking, no, man, it's bad enough that the Phoenix Fire Department hires the cream away from the other fire departments around us. He was going out on the road now and said, I'm going to pull in all the strategic level bosses now, which would have been brilliant. But that would have taken some, there would have had to been some chaperoning process to get the new ones and the existing ones to kind of accept each other, let's say. Mm.
Yeah, I think in a large organization, it would be a lot harder to do that than a moderate or small organization.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to do it sometimes. But, I think in the case here, there was more encouragement that came along, and they changed the job too.
Yeah, they did. They made it better. God bless them. I mean, that they were, yeah.
If you're a chief and you can't get people to promote, you got to look inside and look under the hood and figure out why people don't want the job.
Well, that's kind of the problem and the issue you see with the fire service today in general. Is we just don't have the number of people that are competing to be firefighters anymore. They don't want to do it. Yeah. So you got to find new ways to entice younger people to cut. I don't understand it. I mean, it's the greatest occupation there is, even with all. It's odd. Death, destruction, the gear gives us cancer, all of it. It's the greatest job ever. You think so? It is. Is it with all the warts, man? Yeah. There ain't nothing better. Truly. Standing inside a burning building with an 1.5-inch attack line. It's like driving a really fast car and having sex with another human being all at the same time.
You can't explain it to people who've never done it before.
No, when you catch on fire, it's a whole different thrill. Yeah. So, and that's one of the challenges we have in the fire service is you have, first of all, a group that enjoys that has their own issues of just managing them in an everyday work environment has its challenges. But the work itself you loved it so much. Now, the problem with that is you got to take the bad with the good. So not all the calls are the same. There's a lot of calls you just, not this again. But you do one to do the other, I guess. I don't know. It's a package. So,
well, let's save some of this. Well, I think we should come back and talk to Terry about some of this.
We
too,
can,
because
yeah.
I think,
well, we're just wetting our whistle on it, Vance.
I think there's a lot more to talk about. But
yeah,
you know what it is time for?
Timeless Tactical Truths.
Yes.
Yeah.
Timeless Tactical Truth. The 4 of clubs from Alan Brunacini's set of Timeless Tactical Truths. You can get them through us at bshifter.com. The name of the IMS game is helping internal and external humans be safe, successful, and connected with their own empowered control. The IMS game is helping internal and external humans be safe, successful, and connected with their own empowered control. Empowered control. External customers, how are we giving them control?
Well, we're a public safety response agency. So we respond to the scene of the incident to restore safety to the community. When we do that, it empowers them to return to their normal life. They no longer have to fight for their life because we came and eliminated whatever hazard was causing them to lose their empowerment. So that was, and command, the more organized and methodical we do that, the quicker we restore order, the less resources it takes, the more successful we are, and the quicker life gets back to normal again.
And as far as the internal humans, how do we empower them to get to the safety part of all of that?
Well, we empower them by giving them a system where they can show up, where the first unit gets to the scene and they establish command of the incident, and then they're empowered to manage an IAP that quickly solves those incident hazards and problems. So there's the empowerment. Is the organization has systems that make us more effective when we're delivering service. So there's,
all right.
That's my 2 cents. May or may not be true, but that's what we're throwing out today.
Well, I'm inclined to believe it.
Thank you, Vance.
All
Me
right.
too.
You're welcome.
That's what we're going to go off with.
I'm empowered to believe. All right, that does it for this Bee Shifter. Thanks so much for listening. Hey, if you haven't done so already, make sure you check out the show notes so you can see what we have coming up. We have a few things, including the Hazard Zone Conference 2024 in Cincinnati. And there's one more thing that we're doing. We're looking for your helmets. So there's a link to where we are getting your helmets for the AVB CTC in the show notes. Make sure to subscribe too. Tell a friend. And until next time, thanks so much for being here.